Hello and welcome to my new kitchen. I am so happy to cook with you today in my new kitchen. And since we're in the pantry challenge, I thought that we would tackle something that happens to me a lot. I think I have something and I don't. I have a whole list of breads I want to make, right? Then I open up my freezer to grab out the yeast, and I have one packet of yeast and 5 different recipes that I want to use. What do I do? Well, I have a little hack for you. If you only have one packet of yeast, we are going to take our yeast and we are going to activate it. So this is my 1 cup of very warm water. You don't want it hot, so you stick your finger in there. It should feel about the same as your body temperature. I'm going to take about a tablespoon of sugar and dissolve it in there. And then I'm going to add my yeast. And since this is active dry yeast, it needs to sit in there and dissolve before I add my flour. If this was instant yeast, I could add the flour at the same time. So I'm just going to dump in my packet of yeast. And we're going to wait a few minutes for this to dissolve and get all bubbly, and then we're going to add our flour. We're going to utilize this very similar to how you would use a sourdough starter. It's essentially going to become a starter, and our yeast is going to double in size. We're going to take half and we're going to bake our first recipe. Then I'm going to feed it again. Just put another cup of sugar, or flour, not sugar, flour and water into the yeast. And then I'm going to let it rise for another half hour and continue repeating that process until I've baked off all of the recipes that I want to make today. As you can see, the yeast has gotten all bubbly and frothy and ready to go. So now I'm just going to take a heaping scoop of flour. You want just slightly more flour than water. All right, I'm just going to stir it in. Now think pancake batter, but a little bit thicker. And I'm going to add just a little bit more flour. Mine's a little thinner than I like. Just a little bit more flour. Like I said, thick pancake batter is what I like to get mine to. That's better. All right, now this is a very nice active yeast. I can't think of the word, but anyways, it got bubbly really fast. It is ready to go. So I'm thinking 30 minutes, and then we're going to come back. So what I suggest you do, clean the sides off so you can see. And I would normally write a line on my jar, but there is a line on this jar, and the starter is right at that line. So I'm going to know when it is twice as high as that line that it is time for me to go ahead and bake with it. And you can let it get a little higher. It's why I put it in a big jar. Sometimes I get busy and you can put it in a bowl, but a jar works best for me. And then I forget all about what I was doing and I walk away. You don't want to do that for too long. Set a timer, but this way, the big jar is going to give me a little bit of forgiveness if it happens, you know, that I forget. So now all I'm going to do is put a cloth over the top, put a rubber band. I'm going to set this on top of my stove with the light on, just so it's nice and warm but not hot. And we'll come back and see what we have in 30 minutes. All right, it's all nice and bubbly, and it has more than doubled. So now it's time for the next step. Now I can cook from this, or bake from this as much as I want, just like a sourdough starter. Now it's not going to taste like a sourdough starter. It is not the same thing. It will become one if you continue to put this in your fridge or keep it on your counter and bake from it and feed it. It will turn sour and it will taste just like a regular sourdough starter. And you can keep it alive for as long as you want. Or you can make it up and bake it off till it's all gone. Don't feed it again. And then you've made all the recipes that you want. So I actually kept one of these alive for over 3 years. I know sourdough people are not going to like that I said that, but that is how I did it. I didn't know any better. I had some yeast. I had a bunch of recipes I wanted to bake, and I happened to be watching a sourdough video, and I thought, what if I just kept feeding my yeast? And it worked, and it was amazing, and it tasted delicious. The only reason I baked it off at the end of the beginning of this year, well, it'll be last year by the time you see this video, the beginning of 2024, is because I had to change my eating habits for health reasons. But now I've got my health back under control and I feel amazing, and I'm ready to get back into my bread baking journey. All of those words just to say that you can have yeast anytime you need it, of course, if you have a sourdough starter, but if you don't, this is a very good option. And a lot of times I will find myself with one thing of yeast and 5 or 6 recipes. So that doesn't really add up unless you do it this way. And it doesn't taste like sourdough unless you keep it for like a week or 2. And then it gets sour. So it just tastes like regular plain yeast bread. So now I'm going to, well, first I'm going to add my water. I'm just going to follow my typical bread recipe, 2.5 cups of very warm water. I'm going to use just a little bit of sugar. You could use honey, whatever you use for your bread typically. And then I'm going to dissolve that in the water. I'm going to take out half of my yeast and keep half in the jar. Sometimes it all wants to come out. You just gotta finagle it. Oh, look at that. It's so beautiful. And it smells just like regular yeast. It's not sour at this point. And then I'm just going to mix that into my water so that it all dissolves in there, just like you would a regular packet of yeast. And then I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients as soon as I don't see any big lumps of starter. This is one I started yesterday, and it smells very yeasty and not quite sour, but you can tell that if you continue to feed it, it will be sour. So now we are going to add, oh, I forgot to add my egg and my oil. I will link my basic bread dough recipe down in the description. This is a recipe that I use for everything basically that I bake that is bread. It's just really simple, and everything I've done so far with it, it tastes delicious. All right, now I'm going to start adding my flour, which it's about 5 or 6 cups of flour, just depending on all the environmental facts that go into that. And also how packed on your flour is too. Alrighty. So I'm going to go ahead, finish off this dough, knead it, because this is about how this works and what you can do if you find yourself in the same pinch I found myself into today. Now, Here's the beautiful dough. It is all ready. It just needs to go and rise and then become the beautiful bread that I was hoping to make today. And I didn't have to throw my plans away or run to the grocery store, because what is a pantry challenge all about? It's about using what you have and making the best of it, and that's what I did. Now, if all you wanted to do was bake off all these recipes, every time you're done, you would go ahead and feed it. So here is what's left in the jar after we took out what we needed to make our bread. And this is one cup very warm water, just going back into the jar. I'm going to stir the remaining yeast into the water. And then I'm going to add my heaping cup of flour. I need to grab my funnel. Okay, now I'm just going to stir my flour into my yeast and water mixture, and then we are going to cover it. It looks like I should have took out just a little bit more. I'm going to have quite a bit in here, but that's okay. No worries. I will bake off this again. So this will be ready for me to bake off from in about 30-40 minutes. Maybe even an hour, just depends on how warm your house is and everything and how active your yeast is. And this yeast is incredibly active. I have baked 3 recipes off from this yesterday, and I'm going to bake 2 off from it today. And then I just stick it in my refrigerator and it becomes my sourdough starter, or I just bake it until it's all gone. Make bread until it's all gone. And then the next time I want to bake bread and I have a lot, I just do this again. And then I don't have to worry about monitoring and feeding a sourdough starter. And you can, if you want it to be sour, you can start it a couple days in advance. Like I'd say like 3 or 4, maybe even 5. And then when you're ready, you'll have it and you won't have the headache of trying to catch wild yeast. I've done that before, and it seems like every time something happens, it gets mold, or I don't know, I kill it. But this way, I know someone's going to tell me I'm cheating, or it's not really sourdough or something. That's okay. I don't mind. People don't always agree with me, and they don't always have to. And that is fine. So here's your hack for today. I hope this helps your pantry challenge to go a little smoother, because I learned a lot of things last year that I would love to share with you. In the next video, we are going to make 5 homemade pastas that you can make in your kitchen without any fancy gadgets or anything like that. So that way it's just flour, eggs, and water, and it could not be more easy, and it could not be better tasting. I love homemade pasta. So I will see you next time. I hope you subscribe, like, share, all the things, and have a wonderful day.